It's Wednesday, August 9th, 2023, and I will call to order our meeting. 1.1 is approval of agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
No second.
Any discussion? Trustee Wright?
Aye.
Trustee Brown?
Aye.
Trustee Ross?
Aye.
Trustee Castillo?
Aye.
Trustee Friend?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Did you say that there was roll call later, or is that what's not on this?
Missing. So we need to add it.
Oh, should I?
Susan, did you want to pull?
I did. Was I supposed to do that now or after?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, I just want to pull one of the, item 7.3.
Yeah,
So do we need to make a motion now because we already passed that one?
yeah, I think we,
I
yes.
thought I had an opportunity after we opened the meeting.
No, yeah, right now, yeah,
Okay.
not after close, right now,
Okay,
yeah, I was like, but you were looking down. Yes, so, we have a couple things, sorry, there, in the formatting of this, two things are happening, unfortunately, the roll call keeps dropping off, even though it's there on our demo. So we are contacting board docs to find out what's happening with that, I think it's some kind of glitch. And then a date on the bottom, you can't view it, but when you print, it shows up there. And so we can't edit that until after the fact, so it's very odd.
oh, so that's why it's always the meetings, next meeting's March.
Yes,
Yeah, something in the.
so there's two little glitches, so I apologize for both of those glitches. I know Mary has, I have all the confidence that she's gonna track down the person that can help us fix it, so. We do need to start with calling the meeting to order and then roll call.
So, because we already passed the agenda, can we make a motion to, I don't know, do you rescind that or just amend it? Because then we have to add roll call and if she wants to pull something.
Yeah, so I think, it's a tricky one. The cleanest way is if you could, ask Gretchen to amend her motion to pull your item and then we'll just revote, if that's okay. So you'd ask Chris and, because you have the second. So she has an item she'd like to pull so that we can have a further discussion on in the consent agenda.
Okay, just as a point of clarity, should I have done that before so that should have been the first thing?
So the first thing is,
Further discussion.
yeah, so the first thing is we're gonna approve the agenda. There's a first and a second. Is there any discussion? And that's where we'd say, I'd like to pull items from
So
the
then we
consent
missed
agenda.
that part, we missed is there discussion, we missed that part.
No,
I said that. Oh, you said there was.
I'd say.
But we didn't
Oh,
all
you
vote
said-
for it, right? Didn't all vote to approve it.
Yeah, we voted to approve.
We did all vote.
It's fine.
Okay.
I think we, if we can get permission to rescind this and we revote, the board is okay.
Rescind
Yeah.
the motion to approve the agenda with Chris and Gretchen.
Then do we vote on that too?
We're gonna, so, if I may, Gretchen and Chris, if with your permission, we'd like to revise the motion to include pulling agenda item
7.3.
for further discussion, prior to approving the consent agenda. If you guys are okay with that, we
Yes.
could revote.
Yes, so should I say that?
You can just agree to it.
I
Yeah. Yeah, so then.
And then we also want to add roll call?
Yeah,
And add the roll call.
so would that be 1.2 or is that a section by itself?
It is its own section. I don't know. I can't picture it in my head right now, so.
It should be 1.1.
Okay,
I
one,
added
The
it-
1.2 you mean?
It should be 1.1 before we approve the agenda.
and then.
Oh, okay.
But we're gonna add it as 1.2 for this one for.
It has 1.0.
Yeah.
Sorry
Okay.
about that, guys.
Here we-
Summer Ross, Summer Ross is here.
Then do we
Get it
agree
on.
on that?
So now we need a roll call vote for the adjustments in the agenda, which is to pull the one tabled item for further, or pull the consent agenda item for further discussion and add roll call.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jen. Or Ms. Gabby.
Any further discussion? All right. Trustee Brown? Hi. Trustee Ross? Trustee Castillo?
Aye.
Trustee Friend?
Aye.
And Trustee Wright?
And can you give me the number one more time that she pulled?
7 point.
So then will that become 8.5 in action?
So no, she didn't ask to move to action, so what we'll do is prior to adopting the agenda. We can make a motion to adopt the full consent agenda excluding 7.3. So we vote on the consent agenda, we all pass it, or we don't pass it, whatever it may be. And then we discuss 7.3, and then we possibly can have a motion within there. So it's still remaining in consent,
Okay,
but we get to talk about it.
I just want to write it on here so I don't forget it.
thank you for clearing all that up.
So to discuss it in consent, you've got to
Pull it.
pull it.
Mhm.
Okay.
So we do our best to try to pick action items that we think you aren't gonna have
Yeah.
discussion on. So that it just helps with the, the process of the meeting. There's always something, so that's fine, then we pull it, approve everything else and then discuss that one. It's just for the flow of the meeting. For the expediency sometimes of the meeting.
I mean, I know the consent, everything gets approved, but if you have a first and a second, you can't discuss it then.
Well, the motion is to approve the whole consent
Yeah,
agenda.
it's the whole entirety of it.
So
Yeah,
if there's one item like she just wanted to pull, then we pull it, and we approve the agenda.
Well, we could discuss it that way.
Not
No,
during consent.
yeah, we can't discuss individual consent items unless they're pulled, and we approve the consent. Discuss it, and then we can either approve, table, ask it to come back, all the other actions. Yep.
Roll call.
Let's hear it.
Aye. Trustee Wright. Trustee Brown. Trustee Ross. Here. Trustee Castillo.
yes.
And trustee Frank.
Here.
Everyone is present.
And the other thing that I just noticed, usually there's an opportunity for people to speak. It's not on this for close. I don't see any members of the public here. But we might want to add that in the future, because they can speak before closed session.
We've never had it on ours, but we can
Really?
have it in the future.
Yeah, so they would make a public comment on something that's been agendized and closed.
Right, yeah.
Oh, I thought.
We've never had it on ours, but we can have it.
Well, I don't
for the
know, I
future,
just
yeah.
thought it used to be there. That's all right.
It
Alright.
should be there.
Yeah.
So there should be an item that says, is there anyone here who has a comment on any of the closed agenda items? So you guys would hear that before going into close and making decisions.
So that's in the future. we can-
Absolutely.
All right, so now we are closing open session, moving into closed session. 6:09.
Copy, or if anybody else.
Okay, we are back on and recording.
Okay, it is 6:31 and we will reconvene open session. First up is the Pledge of Allegiance.
So should I report out for?
Is that-
Pledge allegiance and then, yeah.
Read the agenda.
It's 3.2. Well, parts are in. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just feel like I belong to you when I stand there, so I looked at you.
Okay, 3.2, report on closed session agenda item.
So the board voted 5-0 to approve the personnel assignment order. 2.2.
Thank you.
All right, next up is 4, public input, 4.1, correspondence.
We have one piece of correspondence that came over the summer directly to the school district that should be shared with the board. It came from the California Department of Education. And it's not a typo that when they're referencing 2022. So a year ago in June, the LCAP was presented and the board approved the LCAP. At that meeting, what Ed Code states is that you also have to also approve the local indicators. That wasn't done. There's no fixing it. So when I submitted our LCAP report in September, after I was hired, I went through the board agenda, looked to see if there was any there, and I was like, oh, no, it doesn't look like it was there. So I contacted CDE and said, hey, how do we fix this? If we can bring it in August, in September. They said, get back to you. Well, they got back to us in June of 2023 and said, hey, you needed to do that and you didn't do it in June, there's no fixing it. But don't do it again. Well, luckily, we didn't do it again. We passed the local indicators at the same board meeting as we did the LCAP. In fact, we brought it both times. We brought the LCAP, and so it's fine. So it's just kind of a little bit of a finger wag saying, hey, in 2022, you should have done that. So that is the gist of that memo from the California Department of Ed. The county office also got the letter.
Right, 4.2, public comment. At this point in the agenda, the board welcomes comments on matters of district interest. In general, this section of the agenda is for individuals or a representative of a group to address the board on issues not listed on the agenda. Is there anybody, did you get any? Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak? All right, then we will move on to section 5, approval of the minutes. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes, or should I
This
do
is
it both, or is it one by
Singly.
singly, Tom? Single?
Yeah.
Okay, I move that we approve the regular meeting minutes of June 14th, 2023 as written.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Trustee Ross.
Aye.
Trustee Castillo.
Aye.
Trustee Friend.
Aye.
Trustee Wright.
Aye.
Trustee Brownell.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, 5.2, regular meeting minutes of June 20th.
I move that we accept the regular meeting minutes of the Board of Trustees for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 as written.
One second.
Any further discussion? Trustee Castillo.
Aye.
Trustee Friend.
Aye.
Trustee Wright.
Aye.
Trustee Brownell.
Aye.
Trustee Ross.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, next up, in section 6, information discussion, 6.1, board member reports. I'll start. I did attend the August 2nd Cayugas Advisory Council meeting. They're enjoying being in here. That's nice. And I also registered for the CSD SLO County Road Show, which is happening August 30th at SLO High School.
And I'm gonna get more information on that later today too.
That's it for me.
Nothing from me.
Yeah. Summer's usually pretty quiet.
I've been on vacation and I did register for the CSBA road show as well.
Well, I wish I could have been on vacation. It's been a long road back and I'm still trying.
Well, we're glad to have you back.
Pardon?
I said, we're glad to have you back.
We'll see. I have very little hearing left. So if I nod, that just means, you know, you probably said something really important.
Well, we'll definitely talk louder.
Thank you.
All right, 6.2, superintendent's report.
So this summer, Melanie and Liz and Mary and I, Ishmael and Martin spent the summer with some projects. I love a good to-do list. I have to say it's a sickness for me. Some of those things were, we finally painted the hallways, which will make my principal very happy. We have not been painted for over 15 years. And you can imagine the little ones running around. So they are painted and fresh and wonderful. And then we redid the staff lounge thanks to the PTA's donation, which now gives a very comfortable setting versus it was kind of sterile and a little bit of a storage room. So it gives them a place to decompress, have lunch, talk, and feel kind of appreciated. So I'm really happy about that. Martin and Ishmael have done a great job with deep cleaning of the classrooms and accomplishing almost all the work requests from staff, although they're still busily working on those until first day of school on Thursday. And then we did some deep dive in our policies and procedures related to our library processes, our visitor requests and processes, and then last but not least, we created a full discipline guide. You guys recall back when we were reporting out our LCAP survey results, the one area that wasn't really pretty strong and kind of stellar was parents, students, and teachers' questions around our process and procedures related to student discipline. So at the next board meeting, after I present to staff next week and get their input, we have a discipline guide for the board to be aware of, and then I'll talk to you about the communication plan to our parents regarding that guide, so that there's clear expectations and understanding. With all of that said, discipline is an individual decision. So even though it's a guide and it gives you ideas and input and clarity around process and procedures, administrators make individual decisions based on that student's intervention, their history, all of those type of things, guided by educational code. So I don't want you to think what this is if student does this, this happens. That's actually not allowed in ed code. But it does give you an avenue to understand. These are the interventions needed, these are the likely consequences, so everyone's aware. And that was a big lift, but I'm happy about it, and I think it's gonna be great. I think staff will appreciate that clarity as well. And then lastly, our middle schools, much like we talked about, our middle school teachers have been working incredibly hard on the redesign of middle school electives. And so that big launch into shorter electives with highly engaged topics that are current and relevant. And so, again, at the September meeting, we'll present all of the electives for the year. We'll talk about robotics, the telecommunications, floral design, marine title research, jewelry making, stagecraft design, and just some really cool things. And I love to see our teachers and their enthusiasm around it. I'm super happy about their commitment to kind of revamping some of the work that they've done, and they have the ultimate say in that topic area. I gave them some big buckets like, hey, I think this would be great from surveying students and what they're interested in. And they really just jumped in and done the heavy lifting, which is great. And school starts on Thursday. Over half of our staff is back today. We did a full day literacy training, which was so great. And the energy in the room, we had almost every parent and almost every elementary teacher. Unfortunately, life and scheduling didn't allow for everyone, but basically 1-on-1, and everyone else was here. And we talked about the processes of literacy, the underlying processes of literacy, and how to stimulate students to have greater self-correction and awareness when they make errors in reading, whether that is a substitution or phonological processing error or even comprehension. So it was a great day, I will tell you, with that wonderful team of people. And the rest of the team will be back on Monday. We'll have about half, a little over half meeting days, and then teacher work days. And then the day before school starts, all classroom teacher work day. And then ready for our kiddos. And then I'm sure Liz will talk about, do we have PTA on here? Okay, I will talk about it then. And then PTA on August 16th, like always, the day before school, we'll have their root beer social. So everyone is welcome to come to that. I believe it's at 2:30. Okay, good. 2:30. And they'll be right out here in the quad. There'll also be PTA selling their swag. And just a welcome back, some kinder orientation, some 6th grade orientation, and then we're right back at it, the new school year. Year 2 for me, which is wonderful. And that's it.
Hey, section 6.3, Cayuga Elementary School Library Services Manual and Procedures.
Great. So as we talked about, which seems, I don't know, some days it seems like a really long time ago, other days it seems like last week. I was given the task, and my team and I think rose to the challenge on creating and really researching what are our procedures around the library. How do we do our business around the library? So I took that task very seriously and looked at lots of models. I did a ton of research in the California Department of Education when it came to library standards, recommended books from the library, from California Department of Ed, and what they have to offer, search through our local districts, broad scoping districts in Los Angeles, the Valley, and also in Northern California to get a good flavor and picture. And from all of that, comprise our own manual. So there are parts that are like, this makes a lot of sense. Oh, great, we're gonna, let's do that. Or gosh, I don't really see how that works for us. We're gonna have to modify that. And we created the library manual and procedures. in a document that's right there to touch and to look at, to be posted on our new website when that is complete in the next couple weeks. So that there's great clarity with that. The other thing we realized in our research is that, and this is like no fault to anybody, really, is that almost every, I don't even know if we found one. Did we find one? Okay. I don't think we found a website from, and we've searched just random elementary school district, high school districts, where they didn't have a link on their library page or their curriculum page, where it didn't go to a link now in our day and age, where it has basically the library catalog right there accessible. So you click on it, it's the Destiny Follett link, and you can go right there. San Luis Coastal, all their schools have it. Boom, click on it, and you can pull it up and you go, oh, I don't know, let's see, where the red fern grows. Maybe you want a good cry, okay? Where the red fern grows. And do they have it? Oh yeah, here it is. And here's what it means. Here's the author. Here's a tiny synopsis of it. Every single one. Which I think in our journey together would have been really helpful. So I can tell you that we're already on that, and that it will actually be on our Shell website in the next few days, and then obviously transfer into a full library services page. So every parent will have access to that right there on their fingertips on any book. I think that allows for really, and then of course communication to parents that it's there, because if you don't know it's there, it's not helpful. So if a parent wants to have a conversation around different books, that's where they can easily say, hey, I noticed these books are in here. These aren't books that match our family values, or they are. Oh my gosh, you have this book, was my favorite book growing up. You should read that. Or they can be involved within that decision-making process. Lastly, in the manual, and it is a interactive table of contents, meaning that everything listed in the table of contents on a PDF. And this will be posted as a draft on our website tomorrow. It's not there yet. The board has it, and it was obviously on the agenda. They're all linked. So like you just click on number 2 because you're interested in it, which is school library standards for students. It goes directly to that section, okay? But anyway, and the very last part of this, there's 2 aspects that we should talk about. One of them is the permission slip. So we've already had a permission slip process in Cayugas that specifically looked at, one, of course, you give your child permission to check out books at our library, and 2, you agree to be responsible if you lose that book. And then the other part of it is noting in writing, which is our process. It was our process last year and previous years, that if your child is asking to read a book out of their selected grade level, that we would get parent permission. So if I'm a 4th grader who has really great reading and I want to read one of those middle school books, we're going to call the parent or email the parent and say, hey, you know, Sarah wants to read this book. Here's what the title is. Do you give permission for that? So that was already in place, but it is maintained and called out on the permission slip as well.
Is there an example of the permission?
Yes, it is the very last page of the manual. So I thought it would be easiest to find. And then lastly included, and then I'll field any questions you have or discussion, is the Children's Internet Protection Act. So part of having the World Wide Web in the fingertips of children, right, through a Chromebook, hopefully not a phone because they should be yondered while they're here, but in general is the responsibility of a school district to also teach internet safety. So I put the whole creation of the K-8 child internet protection plan to be rolled out this year. It's just little, you'll see the topics, you can actually, again, see the live links, they're little videos, and they talk about from some of the middle school things, which include, you know, bullying online, sexting online, and the things to be careful of, obviously, and not do. And then also like the whole gambling, information, identity stuff. The little ones and their little game, and like all these really intriguing games. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, do you want to play with me? Like, here, we can be partners. You have no idea who that is, right? And they're in some of the most young games that are on there. So teaching that, standard. She's a new librarian. And library media staff, I should say, and myself and Liz will be responsible for teaching those lessons and having them all complete in every grade level by the end of September. It's not extensive in the sense that everybody gets like 20 lessons, but there's key things in each area to cover. So we
Yeah, I
have,
was looking at that, it says 2 lessons, so that's pretty much it for each grade level?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. Especially for our year one launch.
Right.
Yeah, but I think it'll be great, and it gives good conversation. Again, those topics will be communicated to parents. So as we roll them out, hey parents, this is the grade level topics we did around internet safety. So they are hope and goal and ask is for them to have those conversations at home too. Oh, did somebody blah, 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 at school. Oh, let's talk about that so that they're aware of it too. Because that's that fully like protected hug from both staff and parents at home. I know there's a lot there, obviously, but the good news is that we have this articulated plan, and I was gonna say it aligns to your current board policy. Oh, that's the next the agenda item, which is 6163.1, which says the superintendent or designee is responsible for creating this plan.
Anybody have any comments on that? Are we ready for the next item?
No, I wanna pick through this a little bit. So. There was one thing that maybe I missed it, but there was the age, like. I'm just curious, in our library, is there designated areas for the different age groups? So like K-2 gets this little area. So do you have designated areas for the different age ranges?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's designated areas and there's also some genres. So like historical genres that are there that are not necessarily age-based, but then designated age areas.
So if a second grader ends up in the 8th grade middle school area, what happens, or how does that all work? Like,
That's around
do
the,
they have all free access, or how is a second grader protected from an 8th grade material?
so that's around the classroom or library management of the library staff.
So
For
whoever's
sure.
there.
Yep,
whoever's
because they're
on
they're just roaming the library by
site.
themselves.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they know where and who's able to be where.
Absolutely, the previous staff and then the new staff will. They haven't started yet, but they absolutely will, and that's some of our list. Liz and I as a team is training and support within that development of that new library staff.
Okay, and then, so I did wanna kind of like get a little bit more information on how the selection procedure to provide students with a wide range of educational materials and all levels of difficulty, variety of formats, etc. Do you guys have a more defined, like, what's the process for bringing books in? The vetting process and the team of people, I think actually that's defined in the.
Yeah, it is now, so that's great. Before, the board policy simply stated the librarian or designee chooses books. What I created in here, just as we started to roll through and like Liz and I to understand the nuances around this whole process, is that we have a library team that looks at the auditing of the library. You know what books, and you'll notice that here, what books we have that are they call it weeding, yeah, that we need to weed out because they're outdated, and where are we looking at new ones?
So tell me again, who's in charge of the reading? And bringing in the new.
So the first part of the responsibility is the recommendation from the library staff to the library team that's listed in the manual.
Okay.
So that's how we're looking at that. And then also secondarily to this is that the California Department of Ed also has, much like I described our website will, a recommended California Department of Education book list. That is linked so that you can go on there and type in books that are, so that's part of the vetting process. This has even been vetted at the state level or not. And so that will be one of those criteria we look at as a team. Part of that criteria developed as a team that team will develop. It won't just be like Jen's rules of orders, but
Right.
as we come together as educators, what is that criteria we look at for adding those new books into our library?
Right, it does say here, I highlighted it, I must have missed it, it's the selection of library materials is, administrators, teachers, staff, parents, guardians, and students as appropriate. Okay, and then on the complaints
Yeah.
section regarding appropriateness of library, there's a complaint form, I think you have that in here.
Yeah, it's page 9 and 10.
Oh, there it is, okay, challenge materials policy. Cause I actually, if we can make that a little more simplified, so a parent doesn't feel like it's a daunting, like all the, all this details, just if we could simplify a complaint about a book. I think that would be more beneficial or less daunting for a parent to come forward if they don't feel a particular book is appropriate.
But if looking at this form,
I don't see how you.
they're asking you, have you read, I mean, I don't see how you can make this more simple. They're asking, the school, the title, the media format, author, request initiated, address.
It's really important if this person, request is belong to a group or organizations and identify the name of the organization.
Yeah.
Is that really relevant? If a parent is in here wanting to challenge a book. All I'm saying is I want to make this super user friendly for a parent if they want to challenge a book. Rather than,
Some of the
like,
questions.
please answer the following questions. Have you read, viewed, or listened to the material in its entirety? If the parent doesn't like a book for whatever reason, they should be able to come forward and say, I don't like a book.
Well, then you just answer that question no then. This is yes or no, it gives them the option.
Please cite the specific pages to which you objected and please explain your objections.
The reason those are there is because, like we saw from the governor's letter to all school districts, public school districts in California, is that when we look at removal of books, you have to make sure as a public school, you're not removing them based on a protected class. So that's part of the vetting process, and it's not the parent who would be in trouble for that. It would actually be the school district with your public funds. So these questions are trying to be non-threatening in nature, but get to the heart of what is it about the book that we don't like?
But I feel like that can get quite daunting for a parent to have to answer, what specific page didn't you like? I don't know, I find that quite detailed. If you just don't like a book, you don't like a book. And then bring it back to the school and then let the school ultimately decide. But I feel like this should be a little more user friendly for the parent.
But if you're saying that, if somebody's saying they don't like a book, I'm not gonna assume. I don't like the book because I don't like it. I mean, if I'm evaluating that, I have nothing to evaluate that on. I don't like the book because they said the house was red versus blue. That gives me more specifics. I know that's a silly example. But explain your objections, we would, not us as a board, but you as an administrator would have to have something to go from. You can't just say, I don't like the book. There has to be a reason why you don't like it, and I respectfully disagree that this needs to be more simplified. Because if Jen and the library staff are gonna have to make a decision, they have to know what it's based on. Not just a simple generic, I don't like this book.
And part of the concern I would have is that, say the individual belongs to a group. And that group has designated or targeted a particular book, but they haven't read it. They have no idea what that book said. And so I think probably the best thing that a person can do is look at the book itself, see if there's an offensive concern, and then be specific in what was the offense.
Then it becomes a debate.
Rather than someone telling me, because of a particular group that they don't like the book. So that would be my concern.
Well, I feel like it should be more user friendly for the parents, and if you make it this, I feel like it turns parents away from, you know, trying to take care of their children. And the information that their children are exposed to.
I think the other avenue for that, if we remain the same, is if there's a book they don't like, they would be able to easily look on our website in the future, very soon, and say, so let's say the book is called, Black Table, okay? And I really don't like that book, Black Table. So I would say, I would tell you what, as a parent, I would do, I would tell my daughters, Lee and Kwani, Mommy doesn't like that book, you're not gonna read it. And that's our rule in our family. And I, as the parent, am setting that rule. So there is always that too, which is, and I don't have to explain to anyone why I don't like the Black Table book. Because I'm setting that rule with my child. So there is that now, which before, if they didn't have access to our library inventory, they would never know. And so they wouldn't be able to say, you know, if they wanted to list, maybe their church has a list of books that the church says, these are great books for your child. And that parent says, I agree with my church. And they're not gonna read all those books, they just agree with their church. That is absolutely their prerogative. Then they would have the conversations with their kiddos to say, these are the books we don't read in our family. And they make that choice as the parent. So there is absolutely parent choice in it, but they have to be active within that with their parent or their student conversation or child conversation. Or if they want to go further with it and say, hey, it's not just about me telling my child I don't want them to read the book. I don't think that book should be in your library, and here's why. And then they get kind of into like the more meat and potatoes of this form. That's just my general explanation of that. So still having parents be able to know what books are there and what conversations they need to have with their kids if there's books they don't like within the library, or they have a full objection because they know they read this book and it has, you know, SEX in it, okay? So they don't want that in our library, and they want us to justify how we have that book in our library with that in it, right? And then that's what our committee would have to do, is say, hey, page 4, 28, and 92, these things happen. Why do you have that in the book in our library? And that's where our team would come together then, and we'd say, hey, so we've looked at this, these are the things, and then we would make as educators that decision and recommendation. Either defending it, no, this is something we believe needs to be in there with this grade level limitation, or no, we're not gonna stand on this. And you know, that's where we look at the California Department of Ed recommendations, we look at all these other avenues to say, is it actually a suitable book?
I just want to remind everyone, we have a public library right here. So if there's any book that's questionable that could present bringing information that a parent's not really ready for their child to learn yet, they're more than welcome to go to the public library. So it's how to handle questionable material that would protect all kids and all parents. So there's a public library right there. They can expose them to whatever they need to be exposed to that they see fit. But this way, it keeps it safe for all children.
I think what's different here is what's considered questionable for parent A versus questionable for parent B.
It's subjective.
Right.
That's not, it is subjective, right? So
Absolutely.
but when you use the word questionable, other people may not agree with what you consider questionable, so there's this format.
What you consider questionable, correct?
So when you mentioned about the group, and I just want to comment on, this form says, does the person making this request represent a group? It doesn't mean if you're a group member, you could be a group member of ABC Walk Down the Street Club, and that has nothing to do with that. It says if you represent, so if you're representing the group, not just if you're a member. So that was, I wanted to point that out because I think that's a big difference. Just because you're part of a group doesn't mean that you're representing them on the school.
All I care about is that that library is safe for everyone. And that if a parent has a problem, it's not going to put the parent like under an absolute microscope. Just to be able to freely and easily come forward, they have a problem with the book. That's all I want. I just want to make sure the library is safe for all children, all of them. So that's what I care about. So as long as that's getting done, then. And on book donations as well. I think that needs to be either absolutely no donations, like we need to take a little harder look at donations. Because again, what one parent may want another one may not want, and then some type of a vetting process, because anybody can bring any book in there at any time, and that could potentially expose somebody to something they don't want their child exposed to. So donations, I think, need to be, I personally would say, no, we're not accepting donations right now. If you want to donate books, take them down to the public library. Because if we have plenty of a budget to buy books and we have our own process, just donations could be a little bit tricky.
But they're being looked at.
But they're looked at, and it's right here, it says accept gifts with the provision, that the library is free to decide whether to keep the books in the library's collection, place it in the classroom library, put it in a book sale to raise funds for the library or discard. So,
Well, I have a question. So I'm fine with the description you gave. I think that's a right way to handle it. I think the form is fine. If someone's gonna go through the trouble of complaining about a book, I don't think it's that much information. But I'm out of the loop on how automated the library is. It's been a while. So obviously it's all automated now, if you can put this online, right? Does that system allow a parent to say, I don't want my child checking out this particular book?
No, it doesn't, so it doesn't like X-nay book
Yeah.
titles from it. So what would happen with that is the parent, would basically email the library staff to say, I don't want my child checking out these books, so there would be basically a note or a way that we would try to attempt to track that piece of it.
Well,
Yep.
if someone has that big of a concern, they could try to make it known, I guess. Okay.
Do you think that the form that they have to fill out if you had a problem with the book, you think
Well,
that's?
I kind of agree, you talk to your kids if you have concerns. And it's really subjective what one person wants.
Absolutely, absolutely, I
But you
completely
You
agree.
can't start deciding.
No, I wasn't, all I'm
Yeah.
saying is make it easier for a parent to say, have a complaint, and then put that book up for the scrutiny of, the team of people that they have put together.
Well, I guess we'll see when this goes online, how many people start following it down.
my concern is, I know there are instances of people making complaints about books. In other communities where they don't cite what's wrong with the book, and they'll just choose an author and everything from that. So meanwhile, these school districts are inundated with thousands and thousands of books that they need to vet, and they have no idea what they're vetting. Because the complaint has just been made. I understand Jodi Colt, which, I've only read one of her books, and, her books have been targeted, and she has no reason, she has, the author doesn't understand why. Because, again, there is nothing said, it's just, we object to these books.
Well, I hate to say that the whole library process is discriminatory as it is, because you can only have so many books in there, right? So there is a discriminatory process about what's gonna be allowed in there. You only have a certain amount of space. So there's discrimination happening anyway, right? So it's just what books end up in there.
I'm not sure that discrimination is the right word.
Well, there's a picking and a choosing of whatever can go in there. You can't have an infinite amount of books in there, right? So you're gonna have to vet them out and weed them out and bring them in over some criteria. Right?
Right.
You can't have them all.
I agree with you on there, but I wouldn't say every library, because every library, if you say that, every library in this country and in this world would have that same, every library would be limited by space then. I mean, there's certain things, there's the state list, I asked her for the email to start searching that list. It's not just gonna be some random, whatever. I think it's the state list, and I would trust our administration and our library staff to vet those. I personally, I agree that they're limited, but I don't know that I would use the word discrimination.
What's a better word? Discrimination, you have to have a certain criteria to we can't take them all. You can't take them all. You're gonna have to decide between something.
when we look at, the board policies on the next item as well, it does have a list of like about 7 different areas of generalized criteria that's recommended that we look at when we fill a library. You listed actually some of them in what you were reading, which is, you know, is it relevant, is it current? Does your library depict the full scope of your differences with your students, for example, different ethnic groups that attend your school? Is it representative?
Is there a section for the old classics? I mean, is that outdated now?
No, there is absolutely like, and again, so a lot of these questions could be answered because you could put in Old Yeller right away. Now, some of the old classics, maybe not, because is it relevant still? Is it all those things, right?
But who decides that?
Well, in this new plan, that committee would decide that, which is your teachers, your administration, you can have parent reps on that and possibly middle school student reps, which some schools do. Other schools who decide that is the librarian. That sole person. In fact, in most of the recommended board policies, it says the librarian is ultimately responsible for it. Then with the responsibility falling on the principal or superintendent designate, right? But it's like their job to do that. That's what we hire them to do, is to build this robust, reflective library. And then, of course, encourage and nurture the reading process and love of literacy for kids.
So Susan, I appreciate you have a strong opinion on this. But I mean, the question that we're looking at right now is just the discussion of this manual. And can I get a feel from the rest of the board? I'm ready to move on because we have a meeting
We can move on.
schedule.
I think it's a good start, and when we post the books, parents that have concern, we'll look at it and then we'll get feedback.
No, and I want to applaud all the work you did, because we did have a meeting prior to all this and went over it, and I was thoroughly impressed with how much work you did in putting this together and how much you were taking the time to like really pay attention to the quality of our library. So I just commend you for all of your hard work on that.
Well, and I appreciate the time you've given. She's given a lot of time for us to kind of vet through all of this too, so I appreciate that.
And I think I've expressed my main concern, and as long as you, Liz, the librarian, the parents, whoever you pull on board, like, it needs to be safe for all children. So that has to be of utmost a priority. You don't want to expose something to a child too soon. So that's all I care about.
Thank you. All right, item 6.4, first read board policy 6163.1 and administrative regulation with the CESD.
So, it works nicely with what we just talked about, is that our library media center policy is dated 2009. So it's the last time, that it was updated. I will say there is a risk of updating now because I'm hearing through the pipes, because the newest version after this is 2014. It's just still 9 years old. So I'm hearing through kind of the scuttle with everything that's happening in our world that there's going to be additional revisions around that are kind of pushed around this board policy, because it's a hot topic in lots of districts. But what you have in front of you, as we have board policies that we analyze and look at, it seemed appropriate for me to bring you the most current CSBA recommendation as we were looking at our library procedures. So this gives you, remember, we're not voting on this at all. So this gives you the next month to look at. The first is the old policy. That's in all black, no red line. And then you'll see the new policy, and they've done lots of changes within that. And I think what's helpful too is if Mary, you could also give them the new policy without the red lines, because sometimes the red lines are hard to read when there's this many of them. Because you're like, wait, is that there? Is that omitted? Wait, how does that flow? Because there's whole chunks that are caught, lined through. So we'll give you the new policy as it states. Again, it's likely that 6163.1 might have a revision, say, later this year, especially since the governor seems to be quite interested in this topic. He did the letter, and then as you read your CSBA updates, very involved, as well as Tony Thurman, the state superintendent of schools, with library and curriculum in general right now. So take some time, we'll send you the clean version of the new one, which will be easier to read. As that recommendation, and then this will come back for further discussion in September. Yes, Gretchen.
At the end of, on the red line, it says to encourage students to return materials in a timely manner, a nominal fee shall be charged for late returns of materials. And in our, policy, it says no late fees.
Correct. So,
So should we change that to shall? Or I mean, from shall to may? So we have the options if it ever becomes a real problem? or-
I think we should take it off. Most libraries have moved to that. They encourage return of books, but you really only get the fee if the book is never returned upon your conclusion at that attendance at that school.
Okay,
And that's really more aligned to the procedures now.
okay.
So I thank you for noting that, and I will make that, because that's the difference between our process and there. And then you'll notice also, this is interesting, it's in our current board policy too, it's in all board policies. And so, I am, technically I'm 2 months late on this, so I apologize, and I hate being tardy on things, Liz knows this. It says the district shall honor before, August 31st each year, report to on the condition of the school library for the preceding year ending June 30th. So every year, this actually, you should have a library report. That was in your old board policy, and it's in the recommended, that every year we have this conversation around, hey, how many books are being checked out? What's happening? Are we looking at new books? How many new books did we bring in? And we have those conversations on an annual basis, based on the recommendation. Which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those little last lines that if you're not attentive on, you don't realize that you miss it. Okay, so more to come with that. She'll send you the clean version of the new recommendation. And then you'll have these 2 copies of the old and the red line, and then we bring it back at our next meeting to talk about.
All right. Visitor procedure 6.5.
The other topic that came from the June meeting is our visitor procedure. So, what I have attached here is we have, board policy 1250 and board regulation 1250. So those are the regulations we have. We additionally give direction to, our parents as well as the board in your, handbook on what that procedure looks like. Now, in this procedure, there is, it's kind of interesting as you kind of dive into it. The policy itself is fine. So that's the first page where it just says, policy 1250. And it says, basically a school is a safe place for children. And visitors really should be making appointments and scheduled, and you have to have a reason to have access to our school. You can't just say, oh, I just want to walk around your school. That's not the world we live in anymore, right? That's why we have fences, and unfortunately, it's the scary part of the world we live in today. But conversely, in the second one, which is the regulation, so you have policy that says, hey, here's the big picture. Then you have regulation that says, here's the nitty gritty. So in that, it's kind of interesting, I think, because you'll notice it says specifically outsider registration. And then the statement says any person other than the following is considered an outsider and required to register upon entering school premises during school hours. So this is our current board policy in Cayucas. It was adopted in 2009 and hasn't been updated since then. Which then states a student, of course, a parent, a governing board, a public employee whose employment requires them being on school grounds. That would be examples like a speech and language pathologist who's hired by the county but comes to serve our students. A representative of a school employee organization. So for example, if California Teachers Association came on campus with a scheduled meeting, an elected public official. And then the last one is a publisher, editor, reporter, or other person connected with or employed by a newspaper, magazine, or periodical radio station or television station. So I would like us to bring this back. This is only information right now and really shorten, I will say, in my purview, drastically shorten what that list is. Because I really think most of those people should be registering at our front desk and going through that process. I can't imagine, you know, a reporter being able to say, I'm a reporter, I'm gonna walk in here, and I don't need to register because I read your policy 1250.
Well, I have a YouTube channel, does that make me a reporter?
Blogger,
But I-
all the things.
I sent Jen a question on this too.
Yeah, you
For
did.
me, I get number one, shouldn't have to register, student to school. And as far as number three, I'm sorry, as board members, I think we should have to register. It's a one-time thing, whatever. Or district employees, obviously not, but if you go, but that's the regulation. If you go back and look at the policy, it says any person who is not a student or staff member shall register immediately upon entering any school building or grounds when the school is in session. So those two policies don't align, and I would like to see the regulation more aligned with the policy.
I
than saying anybody. So that whole section, I pretty much redlined myself.
Yeah, and again, these are things that, you know, we look at and explore, and this is why we do policy updates, is that I'm sure in 2009, a different group of people sat around this table and it made a whole lot of sense. And it did at that time. Now we're here in 2023, and this may make more sense if we make some suggestions. So I'd be happy to work on some revisions to that. And it kind of furthermore goes to an action item later in the agenda called the Raptor system that will help kind of solidify what that would look like. But then they would be aligned, and I could bring those back for action. We can work them through, we can throw it back and say, no, do these other things, and kind of move forward to see what that looks like. All of this is about student safety. So this isn't about, you know, my colleague from Pastoral was coming to visit me and I know them and they walk through. It's not about that. It's about just having consistent practices so that we're not putting staff in a situation where they do one thing for one person and another for someone else. So that's just consistent for student safety. That's just information. Yep.
All right, so 6.6, CSBA's annual education conference.
So, we talked a little bit about this at the last board meeting. I know board members have gotten a lot of emails about this pertaining especially from CSBA, asking for registration in the conference. So it's getting down, even though the conference is in, the very end of November, December, it's starting to fill up. So this is the time that we need to start making decisions around that if you haven't already. I additionally put in the board handouts just as I know you get a lot of email, because I do as well, but they are offering quite a few things. So maybe the annual conference is too, like, everyone has their own commitments at home or work, and it may not be something you can do. It's important to look at, and you have them in your folders. They're offering a roadshow, where they want to hear from you about, how things are going and their strategies. The local one here is August 30th, 6 to 8 at San Luis Obispo High School. So that handout is in your your binder. There's also training coming up. This came in your email, but again, I know there's a ton of email that comes. So I copied it for you. Understanding the Brown Act. So these are virtual sessions, so that's not bad because you do it online. And they have listed all those dates, August 25th, September, October, where they are a 3-hour kind of snapshot of our process and procedures related to running our meetings. There is a more elongated, what's called Master in Governance, and that's, or people call MIG. But that is a longer training throughout this whole school year and really becoming quite savvy and informed around your role as a board member, your leadership, Brown Act, all these other things. So it is quite a time commitment. There's a link for that, and it gives you all the information. So these are here because I know not everybody is an annual conference goer person, but there are lots of opportunities because you guys have run for an office that's complex, it's demanding. It probably seems that sometimes no one's happy, then it seems everyone's happy, then everyone's upset. And so sometimes additional training and support can be helpful in that. So that's what I wanted to have everyone.
I have my master's in governance, so if anybody wants to ask questions about that, I'd be happy to share with you.
Yeah, did you like the courses?
I was in the pilot program, so it was a quick 6 months. I had to go up to Sacramento
Oh, in person.
for, yes, it was intense, but it was a good, yeah, I did. I did like it. We did a little table thing where the AEC conference is talking about it. It was great.
And if you're not sure about that big commitment, a great thing to do is like what Terry said, if you go to the annual conference, you can go to a section on, hey, what if I want to do MIG, Master in Governance, what would that look like? And so then you commit to an hour versus that whole year, then at that hour you go, that is what I'm looking for, okay, I'm good. So those are the type of things to look at. Mary will help facilitate any of the registration around that.
Did we already get registered?
Oh, yeah, you and.
Yeah, the one, Gretchen and Carrie have both already committed. And I do have one more room reserved at this point, and that room block will close on the 15th. So if somebody does want to go, please let me know. If not, I'm gonna give that room away. And there's other rooms we can book later after the fact, but I do
By
have
the
that one.
15th?
By the 15th, yeah.
And it's San Francisco this year. Nice little drive. Yeah. Or whatever. Okay,
All right, 6.7, governance calendar.
so every year, just like we have our instructional calendar that probably went out while we were at this meeting. Did it?
I
Okay,
think so.
didn't the instructional calendar go out with your letter?
No, just the letter.
Okay,
Yeah.
it'll go out Monday. That plans the entire year in a nutshell. This is a reminder of our governance calendar. It has the required topic areas. Of course, there's always more to talk about, when it comes to schools and kids, but it gives you the snapshot of our year in review. From our budget cycles to our HR cycles to student learning and our LCAP, our student scores. I will tell you, I have been, quite fascinated by looking at every single individual student CASP scores. They have not been released to the public yet. In the next few weeks, we'll get an embargoed release and then a full release. If it's released to the public, we will present it in September. If not, it'll be in October. But we are diving in there and presenting that actually at our staff meeting. So when teachers are planning for some of their instruction and intervention and acceleration, they have that current data on their kiddos. So that's exciting, but gives you the overview of the year of governance. I know you're all excited, it's two-sided. So that's a modification, a slight modification from CSCA, but it's really their recommendations to keep you aligned with all the statutory limits that we have.
So with the LCAP, are we going through everything that we did this past year, or are we?
So the LCAP template is up for a new one. So the good news is that we just revised our goal, and I feel like we're going to be able to really soar in implementing that new template. The first template training is in a couple weeks, so I'll be able to update you after that. The LCAP revisions have been sometimes slight, and other ones it's like a full, like upside down redo. So I'm hearing an indication that it is not a full revamping, and it's supposed to be a little bit user friendly within the template, but we shall see.
Okay, great, well, you guys did so much work last year on that, so.
So before we get to the consent agenda, is it now when we discuss the item 7.3 that was pulled?
We would accept the motion to approve the consent agenda, except the one item with the 7.3.
But it was already pulled. We already approved that. I don't understand what.
We approve the agenda as a whole. Now we'll approve the consent agenda minus that. And then we'll discuss it and then we'll vote on that one separately.
Okay, so being devil's advocate, then why did she have to pull it then and not now?
Because it's altering the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you didn't do that.
I just want to get the right.
The only
the right
option you
order.
had, if you didn't pull it then, was that it's to approve or not approve the consent agenda.
Right, so, okay,
That's my
so,
understanding.
so then the motion is made to approve the consent agenda without 7.3, then we discuss that.
Then we vote, yeah. Then we
Okay, got it.
Yep, and then we discuss that one, and then vote separately on that one. I know, it's very cumbersome. I agree.
Well, I think I get it. So I'm gonna make an motion to approve the consent agenda except for item 7.3 that was pulled when we approved the agenda.
Correct.
I'll second that. What he said.
Any further discussion?
Do we discuss now or not?
No discussion on the consent agenda.
Trustee Garcia,
Aye.
trustee Brand,
Aye.
trustee Wright.
Aye.
Trustee Brown. Trustee Ross. Motion passes 5-0 to approve minus 7.3.
So now it's 7.3 time.
7.3 was Lozano Smith Attorneys at Law Agreement for Legal Services. So you're at Susan.
Yeah, I just wanted to find out a little bit more about how we go about picking and choosing our attorneys. And Lozano Smith, I know are like kind of the popular attorneys in the area. How, and I know he was with Scott too, so I'm just curious how we keep rolling with the same law firm.
Well, the way I do that is I look at the service they provided us last year. If it was adequate service, were they timely in their responses? Were they extraordinarily high cost? We spent under $10,000 in legal fees last year.
Is that,
Very low. We had budgeted 50 because that's what was rolled from the budget before. That's partially because of COVID, right? So when COVID, everyone was doing in COVID, there was a lot of legal conversations every superintendent needed to have. So I think there was a, like, oh, let's make sure we have that, because you don't want to move from the general fund and impact the reserve, you don't have to. So we were right under that. We had one lengthy investigation that took about 85% of that cost. The rest of it was a little call here or a little call there. So the timeliness of it, are you comfortable with the attorney, the advice they're giving, and are you happy with that? So
did you, just out of curiosity, did you have Lozano Smith over where you were before?
Mhm.
Or do you have him too?
Yeah, Lozano Smith is there. Lozano Smith is at the County Office of Education.
So just another point of like clarification. So for example, during COVID, and the attorneys probably aren't gonna like this, but so if you all are asking questions and if they're representing all these districts, why can't they disseminate the same information to everyone and cut everybody's costs down? You know what I mean? It's almost like so they get to tell you and bill you, they get to tell them and bill them the same.
Actually, so Dr. Brescia, the county superintendent, your previous superintendent, you're all very familiar with him. That's exactly what he's doing. So
Brescia
he,
is.
so he on a common complaint or a public records request that everyone gets, he will actually contract with one of his attorneys to say, I need this answer for all of my districts, and then disseminate that out. So he's actually made, I
I
will
would save a
yeah,
lot of money for
super
a lot of district, the attorneys aren't gonna like it, but.
It's super helpful. And then at the superintendent's meeting, so once a month, we all meet as a superintendent council. If there is a common issue we have, then Dr. Brescia will say, it sounds like a common issue in multiple districts. I will have our attorneys do it and disseminate it out. So
Which
that
would
exactly,
be Lozano Smith.
it is Lozano Smith.
Okay.
Yeah, unless it's an area that maybe isn't their expertise or something to that matter, and they want to go on a different attorney. And I would say last year it was Lozano Smith, I believe, every time. But yeah, so that's exactly what he's
What would
doing.
our process be if we wanted to pull in other opinions or get other attorneys, like if they're kind of like the big kid on the block here, like.
So, but this doesn't mean we have to use them. This is really just an agreement for payment.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've used, a couple years ago, I used a different one for a school matter, and so we can use a.
Did the school pay for it or did you have to pay for it?
No, school, it was a school matter. It was a different attorney though.
Oh,
Yeah,
so we could technically, if we wanted to reach out to a different attorney, what would the process be for that, for like, for example, what you did?
So this isn't like a really fine.
yeah, it's not inclusive or exclude or.
Only,
inclusive.
like we're only using
That's
that,
Thank you.
we're only.
In
using
X,
that.
whatever it means.
Yeah.
But yes, so, but right now, so I don't want to mislead the board. So it is not that. We could bring another, for example, the previous superintendent had 4 attorneys that were contracted by the district. And those attorneys were in place last year. We utilized on our basically 4 issues that we had, Lozano Smith.
And then do you decide that?
I do.
Okay.
Yep. But there could be, so if we had a dispute with the county office of ed. And their attorney is Lozano Smith, I can guarantee their contract is bigger than ours, us being Cayugas. Then we would have to find another attorney, because they would have a conflict of interest.
Right.
So that's what we would do. So we would bring a contract to the board with a different attorney. Maybe that's there's a very common one called F3. It's like Fagan Full Force Frost. There's another one that's AALRR, Anderson,
Were these the ones that-
Lloyd, Brood, and Romo. So these are all educational attorney firms, very large ones, but then they have local areas.
A specialty for what they,
Yeah, or in this case, these firms, they all serve education, and then they will have a wide array of attorneys, like a facilities attorney, a special education attorney, a labor and management attorney. So when we contract with Lozano Smith, it's not just our one attorney. She has certain expertise, but if we were possibly doing facilities, then we might see someone else in Lozano Smith because that's their expertise. But they have that wide spread because they're a larger firm.
I wanted to bring it up because I just was curious about our whole attorney process
Yeah.
and how we pick and choose and, you know, who would be picked for what and, you know, if we as a board are having an issue, you know, we want maybe more specific input or legal advice. I think it's just good to know.
Yeah, there's two other law firm contracts that may come to the board in September. We use a separate firm for special education law. What I have to do is look at the dates on it, because a lot of times they're not an annual contract for payment. So they're like a 3-year span, so you don't have to bring them every year. So I just need to check in as you're talking. I'm like, gosh, I wonder if this is the year that expires, so that would come to a local person, firm, I should say, for special education. And that was one previously used by this district, has some good relationships with our families. I've actually utilized her a few times in Paso Robles, so I know her quite well as well. So yeah, that's kind of the process we look at.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Someone want a motion to pass this item?
I move that we accept the agreement for legal services with the Lozano Smith attorney clause.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Trustee Grant. Trustee Wright.
Aye.
Trustee Brownell. Aye. Trustee Ross.
Aye.
Trustee Garcia.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, now we're back to the action session, action 8. First up is 8.1, approve and accept donation.
We also have 7.5. Oh, that was the consent.
Oh,
agenda. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I didn't say anything. I would wait.
Yeah.
Sorry, just 1 second. We need just for 1 moment here. Okay, we are on 8.1?
Yeah.
Okay, 8.1, is that the
One more.
transportation?
No, you-
Oh, that was consent, sorry. 8.1 or 8.2?
8.1 is, 8.2 is education.
Oh, that's the major thing, I didn't have my head out for that, so, sorry about that. Okay, so we want to publicly thank Cayucas Rotary, or the Rotary Club of Cayucas, who donated in June prior to the end of the fiscal year, $1,000 to give us a jump start in our electronic communications new middle school elective. And so this is an elective class that looks at coding, but also soldering and wiring of little gadgets. And it is starting, our science teacher, Mr. Way, will be teaching it, and it's one of the electives we talked about to broaden the scope of interest. Because we have a lot in that area, which is great. And so that seed money will really help pay for our little soldering equipment and some of the actual little guys that they're making. There's like a lizard they're gonna program that will watch, which are coding, as well as looking at the build. So it's both the soft and hardware side of it.
That's cool.
And then we also have a donation of $100 to our music department. And is that from, I'm sorry, mine has a hole through that first word. in there.
It's Mr. Beck.
Oh, Mr. Beck, thank you, and Y Incorporation, for the music department. So we want to thank our community, sponsors and partners in all that they do.
Now we're at 8.2, CESD.
We have to.
Oh, sorry, whoops. Still on. I'll make a motion to approve and accept the 2 donations.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Trustee Wright.
Aye.
Trustee Brownell. Aye. Trustee Ross.
Aye.
Trustee Castillo.
Aye.
Trustee Grant. Motion passes 5-0 to accept donations.
Now we are on 8.2 CESD and Campus Education Foundation recognition.
So this item should look familiar. It's been on the board agenda a couple times. Based on the board discussion the last time at the agenda in the first meeting in June. It has been narrowed down to 3 locations of the perpetual plaques. Those locations would include, when you go outside past this gym to the left, there's a little corridor where there currently is 2 benches located. It would be the removal of the red bench, it would be relocated somewhere else, and the perpetual plaques placed there. The second location is within the vestibule when you walk into the outside entrance of the multi-purpose room. And it would have that perpetual plaque there. And then the last location is within the gym walls on the left-hand side on the east entrance. Wall, the perpetual plaque in those locations. And for those who don't recall or who haven't maybe ever watching online, this was a partnership brought forward with Cayucas Elementary School District and Cayucas Education Foundation that looked at honoring not only our community partners, school employees, and really just that celebration of what makes Cayucas special in that partnership. The agenda item articulates the process of how that would look, with the committee meeting once a year, and doing that recognition. It also outlines the financial commitment of the 50-50, the perpetual 50% by the district, 50% by Cayucas. Education Foundation not to exceed $2,500 in any given year. Really the first year would be kind of the more expensive year for that large plaque, and then after that, you could imagine that that would be very financially reasonable. And that these would not be automatic names put on this, but all through a recommendation process. I think that's kind of the gestalt of the summary. Typically, as a staff member, I usually say the following words afterwards. Staff recommends. I'm comfortable with all 3 locations. I am comfortable with the partnership with the foundation. And I've come from multiple districts that have similar type of symbolic gestures to honor people who are committed to education and the partnership of education. But ultimately, for the board policy, this would be a board decision. And so, thoughts, ideas, we can talk it through, I can answer questions.
I think we've all talked about it a lot. I think the main thing to decide is where. I will speak for myself. I think the idea is great, and it's just more of the location.
I'd like to know where the Cayucas Education Foundation and brought it wants it.
Well, we might have someone who can make a public comment around that.
I would like to.
If someone,
I don't think we care. We want it to be in the place that's easiest to maintain for the school, and the place, going on into the future.
Probably
Where
in
you
the
want it to be.
vestibule then.
Well,
Probably
the
inside the-
library, I mean, it's like
the
the gym, it's visible, that's where events are, people walk by all the time.
Inside the gym,
Well,
or
yeah,
in the vestibule,
right, we walk.
here,
Yeah, cause it's inside. Yeah, because it's protected, it's inside, it's
you want it in
gonna.
there?
Whatever you want.
The only reason I would say no for the inside is because people, let's say they're here on the weekends or whatever, they can't see it.
Yeah.
If they're saying, oh, that's Joe Blow or neighbor or.
It's protected.
I'm a fan of the vestibule, that's my vote.
and if you're a big fan of it, you can make a motion for it.
Number 4, Gretchen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to you guys, I'm not pressuring anybody.
Well, again, where do you guys want?
They don't.
Where Gretchen makes the motion.
Okay, I move for option 4, which is attachment 2 on agenda item 8.2, so
In the vestibule.
in the vestibule. I move that that's where we put our perpetual plaque to honor
I'll second it.
Does the motion, oh, sorry, we have to do more discussion.
Well, now we can just.
We have first and a second.
Any further?
So does does the motion need to accept the partnership or just, because right now the motion is just the location?
It's to approve this whole agenda item with the
Detail.
details of the location.
Should I amend mine?
Yes.
Okay, I move that we, I move that we accept the CESD and Cayugas Education Foundation recognition. Wall partnership and have it placed inside the vestibule of the multi-purpose room.
Perfect. Does you need to re-second?
Are you okay with our amendment, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
A second, sorry.
Any further discussion? Trustee Brown? Aye. Trustee Ross?
Aye.
Trustee Castillo?
Aye.
Trustee Brown?
Aye.
And trustee
I
Wright?
would say no.
Okay. Motion passes 4-1.
Just mixing it up.
Why do you think that?
Well, discussion's over, so we're moving on to,
The reason I said no, I was, in the area of number 3 today. And
Why did you
and
take
it
them?
seemed like, to me, rather than walking by, not paying any attention because you're moving back and forth really quick. You have a chance to actually sit there and kind of enjoy that area. So that's the only reason. I know it's not as secure. That's kind of a problem. But at the same time, I'd rather see a place that people aren't just walking by hurrying to get to their seat or whatever it might be. So that's why I said no.
I appreciate your clarification. Thank you.
Should spoke up.
all right, item 8.3, visitor scanning system Raptor contract.
Okay, so, I'm bringing forward this recommendation, as a part of a plan to look at how we, keep our schools safe. It's absolutely the most important thing, we do. We always want to say literacy and math, but really returning children safe to their parents every day is the most important thing we do. I have come from a system, and yes, Paso is significantly larger, so was Fresno Unified and Madera, in a different climate and culture and community. But what I've also found over my almost 25 years in education is that those aren't always predictors of safety of a school. And so what the Raptor system does, and it's not foolproof, it doesn't make everything safe in the world, and I'm not fooled by that or naive in it. But what it does do is it creates a system at your front desk where everyone signs in through their identification card. It scans it, it gives you a sticker that has your picture to yours that you wear. So it's really visible that that person is checked in with Mary or whoever's at the front desk and they've been approved. It also puts our staff in a better position for if there is somebody, unfortunately, who shouldn't be around children that we're not aware of, because we don't get all the updates in Megan's Law and she doesn't have the ability to look up people, it's flagged right there.
It's real time.
It's real time, yeah. The first investment of it is $2,300. That's because if we're buying the equipment. After that, the access to the database, and like the stickers basically run $500 a year. I have used it again in a very large setting and it was not cumbersome at all. And I've used it at our little elementaries too at Paso Robles. And again, it just brings the consistency. You're not judging people. It's how we process for student safety. And you're not, in our town, we're so little too. We're not listening to little rumors of this and that. It's all done outside of us and we move forward. So again, it's quick, it's easy. They have a full gamut. Like when you look at the website I put there, they have a full gamut. They offer everything under the sun. Most of it is not appropriate for a school our size, but I do believe this is, and it brings that just heightened level of security and safety for our kids and staff.
Is this system being used in the area?
Mhm.
Is Morro Bay, is that what they use?
I don't know. I can tell you at Creston, when I went on to the campus just to use the softball field, which is the tiniest school in the world,
Yeah.
they, So,
Cause more ways do the same thing.
Then it
I'm
must
sure
be-
that it's,
Oh, yeah, okay, then maybe you probably, okay, you go one for, Rhino, or Interact, yeah.
What is Interact?
That's like Rotary for high school students.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's not that brand, it's the same.
Works pretty well.
Yeah, so can you hear?
Parents have them too?
So parents who come, great question, thank you. So parents who come to pick up their child because they're not feeling well and they're standing there with Mary, they're not entering the student zone. They don't have to scan and do that. They
Do
can,
they have one?
do what?
Do they have a card to scan?
it's not
Oh,
hard.
it's a driver's license.
Oh.
Yeah, identification. Right.
Background.
It's a Megan's Law background check instantly through that. It runs it through two different systems for people who shouldn't be around children.
Because, yeah, because doesn't Megan's Law, provide all that for free?
Well, she has to then take a look it up.
I check it fairly regularly, but if there's somebody that's in the area, an aunt and uncle, I don't know all their names, and it would take.
And this way, then
15
you
minutes.
physically have a badge that you're there,
Yeah.
and then when you leave, they check you out, say, no, you're not there. So it's also that,
Huh,
they can kind of control.
huh.
It wouldn't be at places like when you have a big school play, it's not like you're not doing that, right? There's adults there, it's not like at that, it's actually not at,
Well,
after
school hours.
Yeah, exactly, so it's just under those parameters of us as the guardian, in care of the children. So staff does recommend approve on. Or, the board can think about it.
You do.
I will make a motion that we approve the visitor scanning system Raptor contract.
So I'd actually like to take more time on it. Cause it's expensive.
Well, I mean,
Second.
is anyone willing to second? I made a motion, was there anyone willing?
I'll second, and then.
And then we can discuss.
But it's an upfront, the upfront cost, and then ongoing, it's not. Ongoing, it's about.
I also feel like it kind of takes away from when you rely on technology. We're becoming so dependent upon technology in so many ways that, you begin to lose, what do I wanna say? There's a personability here. And I feel like adding more technology is going to diminish the personability because you're relying on the technology to do the work for you. And
But do a background check is important, and it should be on it. Because it shouldn't be on someone to have to
And it should,
determine.
and if Mary is gone. And somebody else is in her place there at the front desk, then they have the system.
or all 5 people at once, then it's an hour of them standing there waiting for me to do all the background checks.
I think
Having been
that,
a
do you
teacher,
do that all the time anyway?
I do it once a year, twice a year, just to
What do
look
you
in our
do?
area. I just look up Megan's Law. It's nothing that's required of me necessarily. I just like to be aware of what's in our community for my own
right, and that doesn't
children.
mean
and
for
my
anything,
safety.
because people
But
coming
no,
in.
when people come in, I don't see them.
From LA
Right.
and comes to our
There's
school.
no
We
background
don't do a background check.
Nope.
I just think a little shy of 2,000 for
Well,
a year for the safety and security of our children. is
well,
what-
on an ongoing basis, it's really more like the $600.
625.
Yes.
A year?
$625 a
I
year.
guess the things I read, because I just didn't have a ton of time to look at it, but I did Google like the pros and cons. And some of the cons were you do need technical support, and then they want somebody was complaining because they really want a staff person on hand more. And I'm thinking, we don't need a staff person to just manage that here at our tiny little 150 student school. But there were people complaining that they wanted a staff person to help because you have glitches and like the system's not perfect. So it's an expensive, imperfect, whatever, so.
If it's the same one they had in Laurel Bay, I saw someone do it, you could tell I hadn't done it before, and they figured it out, they didn't look through that.
It was just like a pros and, again, I haven't looked.
No, I
deeper into
appreciate
it,
that,
But it's
yeah.
sounding like the consensus wants it, so.
I think it's pretty minimal cost for safety.
Safety.
I think Val's gonna say something.
having been a teacher in a a middle school that's much larger than this. One of the biggest concerns we had as teachers is we had multiple entries into the school. Our lockdown situation was so imperfect that we were constantly aware of people we didn't know. They could be parents, they could be construction people. We just didn't know who they were. And we would casually ask, "Hi, how are you? Who are you?" You know, that kind of thing. And even if they answered us, we really didn't know who we were talking to. Could have been a parent, could have been a parent that has been told to stay away from a family. There were a lot of ifs. And so if this protects children better than what I had to go through, I'm for it. I don't care what it costs.
What do you mean what you had to go through?
Questioning.
Constantly asking individuals who they were, what they were doing there.
On campus.
It was invasive.
But they can't get in here. They've
What?
gotta go through Mary anyway. They've got, everything's locked down.
I understand see, we had little cards. We would give the card to whoever that person was. They would carry it around. Sometimes they didn't carry it around. Sometimes they came through the access of the cafeteria or a back entrance, and they were there to do some kind of service. We didn't know, as teachers, we didn't know who they were. Now, the office might have known,
Right.
because they may have called them yesterday or a week ago. We don't know. And that's our job to know.
You really think it's necessary here?
Yes, I wouldn't bring it forward if it wasn't. I can't assure, we have no idea the background of people who enter our campus. And so, and I worked in schools long before this was a thing, and that was just the norm. But then knowing now that there's a way, quick and easy way, it literally scans in there, quick, and a sticker comes out, and it has your little picture on it. And it, you tell everybody, I want it right here on, your upper left side, or wherever it may be that we select. And it's a quick visual, like Val is saying, and then if there is, unfortunate violation,
What are you gonna do, Mary, when they
she'll call
come up the negative arrow?
Liz or I, and then I will have a difficult conversation. Unfortunately, not allowed on our campus. You think it's a mistake, contact the sheriff's department. Yeah. There's an occasion where there are some limitations around like individual education plans, and then you just schedule those because they're still a parent, they may still have custody for whatever reason, and then you schedule those outside of the hours of other students being in the location. So there's all the procedures, but we don't even have that information to know that people entering or not have that issue or security need. So I think it's necessary. The other thing is, God forbid something happen, you always look back at what are the things I did to prevent things from happening? Did we have gates? Yes. Did we do safety drills every month? Yes. Have we done this? This is one of those actual checklists that when I look at, have we done everything? Okay, last year, Liz knows, I'm like, we're doing that safety drill again. That wasn't up to standard. She's like, that's what I was thinking too. And it just, people get rusty with that.
Safety in terms of like earthquake or safety?
All of
in
it,
terms
yeah,
of-
under the umbrella of safety, yeah, both of those are both active shooter, fire, earthquake are all drills that we are required to do. And then Liz and I, as the administrators, reflect and look at it, have we done everything we can possible? We can't inhibit everything, but have we done everything possible to keep someone's child safe? And this is one of those things that people walk in and I personally got used to a system. Most school districts do that system where you have that quick check. It's easy. And it's another check to make sure that you're trying to do everything possible to keep people safe. And so that's why I'm recommending it.
And the school's fence the lock, but if somebody wants in, they can jump the fence. And you can identify someone right away if they've got that, you know.
Or don't.
Yeah,
I think wouldn't be too hard to jump the fence down.
yeah.
Maybe that's the word. That entry bothers me, yeah.
Yes.
It's on my list. I don't want a fortress or anything like that. I'm not saying that. We have a beautiful community and a beautiful school. And this is an easy way to add a layer of safety for our
And it's
families.
not terribly expensive.
No.
Right.
$13.50 a kid. You have 170 kids, so it's nothing.
And we're-
So you have first and second, and so there's discussion. Is there?
Any more discussion?
I just personally want to do a little more homework around the company itself, but whatever, it sounds like everybody wants it, so just pass it then. I mean, just go for it, whatever, just. I don't know,
Well, if you're not comfortable, you're free to vote no.
I know, but
Did you call the vote?
Trustee Ross,
I,
trustee Kelsey, trustee Friend,
Aye.
trustee Wright,
Aye.
trustee Brown.
I,
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay.
I told you guys I love to-do lists, so one of my to-do lists was to continue to find someone to do our developer fee study. So every 5 years, the district is required to do a developer fee study. We had one in 14. We did a lot of research around this. We saw that your previous superintendent brought a contract for a different company called Schoolworks to do a study in 19. It actually was approved in October of 19. And they started some of the work around that, I believe in November, December-ish. And then if you all recall, on March 13th, 2020, something very drastic happened that stopped kind of the flow of things. So that study actually, I can't find, and Mary can't find where that came back to the board. So regardless of that, we're very close to those 5 years. The board has directed me to find a company to do a developer fee study. I passed a net to the original 3 I talked about back in May. And then got some more recommendations from the chief business officer and the CMR and the superintendent in Templeton. And we found King Incorporation, who has agreed to do the study. They have proposed a contract here, which is similar to what you see out there, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. They prepare the report, they look at all the analysis, they will come twice to our board meetings. The first one would be in September to discuss the scope of the work, kind of the developer fee process, so that we all have a similar base knowledge around that. And then they will complete the study and come back, I believe in late November, or our November meeting, possibly our December meeting, with their recommendations. So that's what we're looking at. So I do recommend the contracted services for the developer fee study by King Incorporation.
I make a motion that we approve the contracted services from the developer fee study.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I was pretty impressed by what they're gonna do for their background research to do that. That was pretty encompassing of all the different, I like that. And if they're not gonna leave anything out, you know, we're looking. So I like that.
I really like, I will say they're a small firm. And I really like that aspect of it because they're little, much like us, and very personable. So you talk to all the people involved, right there in the study. So it was great.
Okay.
Is there anyone second on the development fee?
Trustee Kelsey,
Aye.
trustee Friend,
Aye.
trustee Wright,
Aye.
trustee Brown.
I,
Trustee Ross.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
That'll be great. So that'll be at the next meeting, I believe. They will.
Oh, that-
Good. The review of action items, tasking and calendar. The only thing we talked about that I remember is I wrote down is to add the public comment to closed session on the agenda. In case somebody wants to, because they can.
The other thing I spoke of earlier in my report is that we're gonna bring the discipline guide. We won't go line for line, but it'll be there. I will send it to the board well in advance. The public will have, access to it well in advance, because it's a little bit thick, not crazy thick, but a little bit thick. So there'll be lots of time to read that, as a draft form for information. And then we'll start rolling out the communication hopefully of that, after the next board meeting. Anything else?
The only thing is just,
Oh, hopefully, yeah. We'll celebrate, some of the things I get really excited about is, our kiddos, you can see their trajectory. For example, you know, someone who might have scored, it's a 4-point scale of exceeding the standard, at standard, approaching the standard and below standard. So maybe in 3rd grade, they were below, the next year they were approaching, and now they're at. I mean, that is like a teacher's dream. And so like when we started digging into that, we were like, oh my gosh, listen, I both got teary-eyed, and a couple young kiddos who have worked so hard and they couldn't wait to call the teacher, be like, you know, this is what they're like, oh my gosh. So it's that, you know, never giving up on students and seeing that. So that's what we'll really dive into is, not only just, hey, look at all the kids who scored high, but even, that second layer, look at the kids who made this progress, which is exciting. Why we're here. Okay. I think that's it.
alrighty, we will adjourn. 8:04.
Very nicely run, everybody, communication, nice.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. We can't wait to see the girls. Are they ready?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my
Top of
God.
my,